Hello everyone. Today I am going to teach you chapter 2 from unit 1 of 11th standard biology NCERT textbook. So, let us start with the chapter. The name of the chapter is biological classification. Okay. In this chapter we are going to learn about what are the different classes that used to be in existence, and in detail we will be studying about the five kingdom classification proposed by R.H. Whittaker. So, during the ancient period, people did not use any scientific basis for classification of organisms. Instead, the criteria they used to classify organisms was purely based on a need to use organisms. It is like the organisms that were used for food, they were put under one category, and the organisms that were used for shelter, they were put under one category, and the organisms that were used for clothing, they were put under one category. So it was totally a non-scientific classification. Fine. And after that, Aristotle, a Greek philosopher, for the first time he used the scientific basis to classify the organisms. So he used the morphological characteristics as a criteria, and he classified the organisms into plants and animals, and also he subclassified the plants into three groups and animals into two groups. He subclassified plants into three groups: trees, shrubs and herbs, while trees being the large plants with woody trunk and branches, and shrubs being the bushy medium heighted plants, and herbs being the soft stemmed small plants. And he also classified animals into two groups: those which have RBC and those which don't have RBC. And after that, Linnaeus, he proposed this two kingdom classification, and the criteria he used was also the morphology. What is actually morphology? Morpho means form, logy means study of form, I mean study of appearance, how they look, okay, the external features. So based on the morphology, Linnaeus classified the organisms into two kingdoms, Plantae and Animalia. But what the thing is, many organisms did not fall into either of the category Plantae or Animalia. Many organisms missed out in this classification. That is the reason for the R.H. Whittaker, he proposed this five kingdom classification. Actually, they thought that only morphology is not enough to classify organisms, because many organisms are not falling into either of the category. So there is a need to use many other criteria other than morphology. So people, R.H. Whittaker, the criteria which R.H. Whittaker used to classify the organisms into five kingdoms are cell structure, thallus organization, mode of nutrition, reproduction and phylogenetic relationships. So what is cell structure? In the cell structure, in the sense like how the cell looks from outside, like the shape, and also what is the cell wall composition, what is the cell membrane composition, does the cell have a nucleus or no, does the cell have membrane bound organelles or no, like whether it is a prokaryote or eukaryote, all this come under the cell structure. Next, coming to thallus organization. So first of all, what is thallus? In plants, before the parts produce, okay, before the parts are formed, I mean the stem, the tree, the roots and all these things, before they are formed, there will be an undifferentiated tissue that will be formed. This undifferentiated tissue, this undifferentiated mass of cells is called thallus. So the thallus organization. Mode of nutrition. Mode of nutrition in the sense, like few organisms are autotrophs, few organisms are heterotrophs. Autotrophs means the organisms which can prepare their food by their own, and heterotrophs are those organisms which cannot prepare food on their own. So based on the nutrition. And reproduction, like few organisms use few processes for reproduction, while few organisms use some other process for reproduction. Suppose if you see bacteria uses binary fission, it produces some spores in case of asexual reproduction, fine. Whereas fungi, it uses some other modes like budding, it uses fragmentation, etc., as a mode of asexual reproduction. In coming to phylogenetic relationships, phylogenetic relations means evolutionary relationships, like how an organism is related to other organisms evolutionarily, that is called as phylogenetic relationship. Okay, based on this criteria, R.H. Whittaker classified the organisms into five kingdoms. The five kingdoms are Monera, Protista, Fungi and Animalia. So let us study about each kingdom in detail. So here is a table which shows the different characteristics of the 5 kingdoms. So the 5 kingdoms are Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae and Animalia. So if you see the cell type, only the Monera, it has the organisms which are prokaryotes. Like all prokaryotes come under the kingdom Monera. But the other 4 kingdoms don't have any prokaryotic organisms, they have only eukaryotic organisms. So first of all, what is a prokaryote and what is a eukaryote? Whenever you come across the word karyo, it means that we are referring to nucleus. Okay, prokaryote, primitive nucleus, the cells which have primitive nucleus. In case of prokaryotes, actually the cells don't have well defined nucleus. It is not at all called a nucleus, we called it nucleoid. So the thing is, the prokaryotes, they don't have a nuclear membrane, and there are also the DNA that is present, the genome of the prokaryotes, it is not condensed into chromosomes. Fine, they don't have histone proteins, so that is a difference. And even they don't have membrane bound organelles. Okay, when it comes to eukaryotes, U means EUU, U means true karyon, true nucleus. Okay, the organisms which have a well defined nucleus with a well defined nuclear envelope, and which has condensed chromosomes, and which also have the membrane bound organelles, they are called as eukaryotes. Okay, and coming to cell wall, so except the kingdom Animalia, all other kingdoms have organisms which have a cell wall. So but the thing is, the composition of the cell wall is different in different kingdoms. Like coming to Monera, when it is in the organisms which come under Monera, they have a cell wall which is non-cellular. Non-cellular, in the case, the cell wall doesn't have cellulose. Here the non-cellular means no cellulose. It means that though it has some polysaccharide, but the polysaccharide here is not cellulose. See, cellulose is also a polysaccharide of glucose, which are linked in a beta 4 linkage manner. But the organisms of Monera, they have a cell wall which doesn't have cellulose, but they have some of the polysaccharide, and they also have amino acids in their cell wall. Protista, members of Protista have cell wall which is different. Okay, let us talk about that. Fungi, fungi also have a cell wall which is made up of chitin. It doesn't have any cellulose in its cell wall. Coming to Plantae, the members of Plantae, they have cell wall, and the cell wall consists of cellulose. Okay, that is important thing. And animals don't have a cell wall. And nuclear membrane, as I already said, prokaryotes don't have a nuclear membrane, while the other kingdoms, all the eukaryotes, have the nuclear membrane. Body organization, members of Monera and Protista, they are unicellular. Okay, though sometimes they are arranged in a filamentous manner, or they live in colonies also, but if you see, they are unicellular. Okay, and fungi, they have like a tissue organization is present, like the multicellular or loose tissue is formed. When it comes to Plantae, they have tissues, they even have organs like stems, leaves, all these things, roots. Okay, they have tissues like xylem, phloem. Okay, but they don't have any organ system. When coming to Animalia, we have a tissue which together formed organ, and organs together form organ system. In case of Animalia, like we have a respiratory system, we have a digestive system, we have excretory system. Okay, fine. Coming to mode of nutrition, I already said you, like autotrophs are those organisms which can prepare their food by their own, and heterotrophs are those organisms which cannot prepare their food on their own, and they depend on other organisms for the food. So I will speak about chemosynthetic and photosynthetic in a few minutes from now in the later slides. So members of Monera can be either autotrophic or heterotrophic. If they are autotrophic, they can be either chemosynthetic or photosynthetic. If they are heterotrophic, they can be saprophytic or parasite. Okay, and protistans, they can be either autotrophic or heterotrophic. If they are autotrophic, they are photosynthetic. And fungi, they are heterotrophic. And if they're heterotropic, and they can be either saprophytic or parasitic. Plantae, they are exclusively autotropic, but sometimes there are partial autotrophs also, I mean partial heterotrophs also, like there are parasitic plants, we'll talk about them. And Animalia, we are completely heterotrophic, we cannot synthesize our food by own. And holozoic or saprophytic, holozoic in the sense ingest the whole food, okay, we ingest the food completely, that is called holozoic. Holo means complete. Okay, I will speak about saprophytes, parasites, chemosynthetic and all those things in like few moments from now. Coming to kingdom Monera. Monera, the members of Monera are the most abundant members on the earth, and they can live in extreme habitats like hot springs, deserts, snow and deep oceans, like they can live anywhere. And kingdom Monera contains bacteria, okay. The bacteria are prokaryotes, and based on the shape, the members of the Monera, the bacteria, okay, the bacteria, based on the shape, the bacteria are divided into 4 categories. If the bacteria is round shape, it is called, if the bacterium is round shape, it is called coccus. Singular is coccus and plural is cocci. If the bacterium is rod shaped, it is called bacillus. The singular is bacillus and plural is bacilli. And here you can see the bacteria can produce spores. See this yellow color one, see it is labeled, this is a spore. So bacteria reproduces asexually by means of spores, okay. And in this case the spore is an endospore because it is formed inside. And coming to spirilla, okay, if the bacterium is spiral in shape, it is called spirillum, and if the plural is spirilla. And you can see the flagella, they are present at the two ends of the bacteria, okay. If the bacteria is in comma shape, it is called vibrium, and the plural is vibrio. The kingdom Monera, it includes archaebacteria and eubacterium. See, later it was said that Monerans, like later the 5 kingdom classification was evolved into 6 kingdom classification, which was proposed by Carl Woertz. And according to the 6 kingdom classification, the Monera is again divided into 2 kingdoms, archaebacteria and eubacteria. So now we treat archaebacteria like separately and bacteria separately, we don't bring them together. But according to 5 kingdom classification, archaebacteria and eubacteria both are called bacteria only, and they are put under the same kingdom Monera. So archaebacteria, archaea means primitive bacteria. This live in harsh conditions, like they can live in harsh conditions because of the cell wall composition, their cell wall composition. They don't have peptidoglycan like the cell wall of other bacteria. Archaebacteria doesn't have peptidoglycan in their cell wall, and instead they have a pseudomurin, okay. There is a component of the cell wall of archaebacteria. And halophiles, they can be other halophiles like thermoacidophiles, methanogens. What are halophiles? Halophiles, they live in extreme salty areas. Halo, salt, phile, loving, salt loving, okay, salt loving bacteria. They can live in extreme salty areas. And thermoacidophiles, see, thermo, temperature, acido, like in acidic, low pH, philes, loving. Thermoacidophiles, heat and like low pH, like loving organisms, and they live in hot springs, okay. Methanogens, methane producing, like these methanogens are present in the gut of ruminant animals. Gut means intestine. Ruminant animals, did you ever hear of rumination? Like did you ever wondered like why a cow or a buffalo sitting leisurely without any grass in front of it, still chewing something? Did you ever wondered what it is doing? It is doing rumination. So what is rumination is that whenever you take a cow or a buffalo to the grazing fields, they try to swallow as much as grass as they can, and when they are brought back to the shed, when they are sitting leisurely, what they do is that they bring back the grass they have swallowed and chew them completely and re-swallow them. This process is called rumination. So the animals which use this process of rumination, they are called ruminant animals. Examples, cows and buffaloes. So methanogens are present in the gut of ruminant animals, and since they are present in the gut of ruminant animals, they will be excreted with the dung. I mean, they will be excreted, right? And they will be present in the dung. And so you might know that we produce biogas from the dung. And how is it possible? Methanogens are responsible for production of biogas from the dung. Coming to eubacteria, again I said you means true. Eubacteria, true bacteria, this bacteria, they have a rigid cell wall which is different from the archaebacteria, and the cell wall of eubacteria has peptidoglycan, and the linkages are different. It has NAM-NAG linkages, and they have flagella. We have seen in case of spirillum, I have shown you a picture, right? Spirillum, it has a flagella at both of its ends. And coming to nutrition, there can be either autotrophs or they can be heterotrophs. If they are autotrophs, they can be photosynthetic autotrophs or chemosynthetic autotrophs. Photosynthetic autotrophs, see, etymology is always important. This is what my teacher taught me. Photo, sunlight, synthetic, which can synthesize, and autotrophs, auto, self. Okay, so the organisms which prepares their own food using light, here in this case it is sunlight, these are called as photosynthetic autotrophs. So examples are cyanobacteria. Under cyanobacteria, some examples are nostoc and anabina. So cyanobacteria, previously these were called as blue green algae because these are photosynthetic, right? So previously, because of its photosynthetic nature, people classified them into algae, but later on, because the criteria for classification changed, people brought them and put under monorans, under the bacteria, eubacteria, and because of the appearance they are called blue green algae. And examples are nostoc and anabina. So if you see here, this is a picture of nostoc, and you can see this blue color mucilaginous sheet, right? So this is a viscous sheet that is around this filamentous blue green algae. Actually this is unicellular, but all the nostoc, I mean different nostoc cells, they came together and formed a filament. These are unicellular, still these are unicellular, and this mucilaginous sheath is responsible for protecting the cells from environment. And you can see the heterocyst. So this heterocyst is responsible for fixing atmospheric nitrogen, atmospheric dyed nitrogen, like we breathe N2, right? We breathe nitrogen gas. So I mean we breathe in the sense, I mean the N2 is present in the atmosphere, fine. So this heterocyst, they take this N2 from the atmosphere and they fix it in the sense they convert the atmospheric N2 into either NO3 minus, that is nitrate, or NH4, ammonia, fine. So that and it will pass on to the other cells, so that the other cells can use it for their own purposes, like for synthesis of some proteins or whatever it is. Okay. And coming to chemosynthetic autotrophs, chemosynthetic, they don't use sunlight for their energy source. Instead they use inorganic substrates like nitrite, nitrates, okay, ammonia, etc., for their energy source. An example, and since they use all these substrates and all, they help in recycling the nutrients, fine. Examples are nitrosomonas, etc. You can find this bacteria in case of nitrogen fixation cycle. Coming to heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are those organisms which cannot synthesize their own food and depend on other organisms for their food. All the bacterial infections which we suffer from, why? That those bacteria, they cannot synthesize their own food, so they infect us and try to feed on us, right? So they are heterotrophs. So like whatever diseases you might be knowing, like tuberculosis, which is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and Vibrio cholera, which causes cholera, Clostridium tetani, which causes tetanus, Salmonella typhi, which causes typhoid, Xanthomonas citri, which causes citrus canker. These are some examples, but there are many. So here is a picture. Just I want to show that there are differences in the phospholipid bilayer, I mean phospholipid layer of bacteria and archaea. And you can see, like bacteria, they have bacteria and eukarya, we have bilayer, okay, phospholipid bilayer. But in case of archaebacteria, they have a monolayer, and the their cell wall is also different, and their bilayers, see, you can see that there are differences in the linkages. So I just want to show that there are many differences in the cell wall and cell membrane structures, because of which the archaebacteria is able to thrive in harsh conditions, but eubacteria cannot. Coming to reproduction in bacteria. Reproduction in bacteria can be by either by asexual reproduction or sexual reproduction. In case of asexual reproduction, it is either by binary fission or by production of spores. Okay, so the spores are produced during unfavorable conditions. Why the spores are produced during unfavorable condition? Because suppose, see, actually the reason is the spores, they have a hard cell wall, because of which the spores are resistant to harsh environment conditions. That is the reason spores are produced during unfavorable conditions. And coming to sexual reproduction, bacteria, they have they use this primitive type of DNA transfer. Primitive types like conjugation, transformation, transduction, etc. So in case of conjugation, what is this conjugation? Is that two bacteria, they come together, and using a structure called pili, a bacteria transfers the DNA from it to the other bacteria. That is called conjugation. In case of transformation, what they do is that a bacteria can uptake a free DNA from the atmosphere. Like if the DNA is freely lying in its atmosphere, the bacteria can uptake it. This is called as transformation. And coming to transduction, transduction is the process of DNA process of DNA transfer using virus. So it is a viral mediated DNA transfer. Like a bacteria is there, it is affected by one virus. The virus takes the bacteria and it infects another bacteria. When it infects another bacteria, it will release the DNA. I mean, it's exactly not like that. When a virus infects one bacteria, it tries to produce its progeny in the bacteria. So while the packaging is happening and all, what happens is that some amount of DNA will be packed into the viral, along with the viral DNA. And when this virus, it infects other bacterium, it now it incorporates its whole genome into the other bacteria. That's how it will transfer the DNA from one bacteria to other bacteria. And coming to mycoplasma also come under the eubacteria. But the thing is, this mycoplasma they don't have a cell wall, and these are the smallest living cells known. So here is a picture. You can see some purple colored dots, right, on the cells. So the these big dots are not mycoplasma. The very small dots which you can see, they are actually the mycoplasma. And this mycoplasma can survive without oxygen, and many a times is a pathogenic in plants and animals. And while we do experiments, we culture cells. For our experiments, we culture some mammalian cells. So what happens is, most of the time, in case of mammalian cell cultures, we used to have contamination because of mycoplasmas only. Okay, and the thing is, it is very difficult to get rid of mycoplasma. I say it is impossible, but it is difficult. So people, usually experts, they suggest to throw away the cultures and use fresh cultures, so that we don't waste time in trying to get rid of this clingy mycoplasma. Coming to kingdom Protista. So kingdom Protista, under this kingdom, the members of this kingdom are single celled eukaryotes. In case of Monera, the members were prokaryotes, right, single celled prokaryotes. Coming to Protista, the members of this family are single celled eukaryotes, and they also undergo reproduction using both asexual and sexual methods. The asexual methods being binary fission or multiple fission, etc., and the sexual reproduction is by cell fusion and zygote formation. So what is cell fusion and zygote formation? Cell fusion, here it is like the gametes. Okay, the gametes here are referred to as cells. So the gametes, they fuse and they form the zygote. So that is what it is written: cell fusion and zygote formation. And this includes chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, slime molds, and protozoans. Let us talk about each of this group in detail. Chrysophytes. Chrysophytes, it contains diatoms and golden algae. So diatoms, why the name diatoms is given is because of the structure. They look like a soap box. You know, a soap box, you have two shells, right, in which, like, in one shell you will put the soap, and over that shell you will use another shell to close the box, I mean, okay, to close. So diatoms also look the same way. That is the reason, since they have two shells, they are called diatoms. And golden algae, these golden algae, they are photosynthetic in nature, right, of course. They have few pigments in them, okay, because of which they look golden in color. So that is the reason the name golden algae is given. And these are freshwater as well as marine. Marine means those which live in sea water, those are called marine. These are planktons. Planktons are those organisms which float along with the currents in the ocean or sea, whatever it is. They cannot withstand the currents in the ocean or sea, and they just float with them. And most of the times the planktons, okay, these are the chief producers in the oceans. Not most of the times, I mean, what I say is that the diatoms, the diatoms are also planktons, okay, and these diatoms are the chief producers in the oceans. Chief producers in the oceans, in the sense, the other organisms which live in the ocean, like the fishes, the other aquatic animals, whatever are present, they feed on these diatoms, okay. So these are the chief producers in the ocean. Most of them are photosynthetic, okay. These are the, okay. And cell walls from, okay, the cell, I already said diatoms, they have two shells, okay. Cell walls form thin overlapping shells and looks like a soap box, and the cell wall has silica in it. The cell walls, they have silica, and because of which it makes it indestructible. So when the diatom is dead also, the cell walls are indestructible and they cannot be easily destructed, and they form a layer like thing in the oceans, and that is called diatomaceous earth. Because since the layer is formed of diatoms, it is called diatomaceous earth. And this diatomaceous earth is gritty in nature, it is granular, okay. Because of its granular nature, and it also looks like a mesh like thing. I will show the images. Because of which, because of this granular nature and gritty in nature, it is used in case of polishing, like same like a pumic stone. And it is also used in filtration of oils and syrups. Why, I will show you. Here you can see, it is like a, this is a picture of a diatom. You can see it looks like a soap box. Epitheca and hypotheca. Epi means above, upper one. Hypo means below. So two boxes, two shells, they are fit into each other like a soap box. And this is a diatomaceous earth. They have extracted it from oceans, and it is very granular in nature, because of which it is used in polishing and etc. And if you see, this is the scanning electron microscope image of a diatomaceous earth. You can see each particle is very granular, and also it is like a mesh. Fine, it is like a net, it is porous in nature, because of which they use it for filtration of oils and syrups. And coming to dinoflagellates. Dino means whirling, okay, WHIRLING, whirling. And flagella means whip. Flagella means whip, whirling whip, dinoflagellates, okay. And these are mostly marine, means which live in seawater, and they are photosynthetic in nature. That is the reason they were previously called golden algae. And they appear yellow, green, brown, blue or red based on the different pigments they have. And they have stiff cellulosic plates. And it has two flagella, one longitudinal, this one, and one transverse, see here, like this, okay. So this transverse flagella, it is present between the two wall plates, okay. So one longitudinal flagella and one transverse flagella. And this red flagellates, they multiply very rapidly, and because of which, because of its abundance in nature in the seas and oceans, they, you know, because of them the tides look red in color. So they, you know, they are responsible for the red tides in oceans and seas. Example, Goinolax. This is an example of a red rhinoflagellate. Here you can see the red tides. Okay, this is because of the red dinoflagellates. And coming to euglenoids, these live in fresh water and stagnant water, and the pellicle, they don't have a cell wall, but instead they have a pellicle. Pellicle is different from cell wall because pellicle has an elastin protein in it, because of which it gives flexibility to the body, euglena body. It has two flagella, but in this case it is not one longitudinal and one transverse. In this case it has one short and one long flagella. It is photosynthetic in the presence of light. If you see, this is the structure of flagella. You can see one long flagella and one short flagella, and you can also see the labeling. It has chloroplast. See this green color thing, all this is chloroplast. Because of the presence of chloroplast, in the presence of sunlight, it acts as an photosynthetic organism. It acts as an autotroph, but in the absence of sunlight it acts as a heterotroph. And the pigments of euglena are identical to higher plants. Higher plants, they have pigments, they have chloroplast A and chloroplast B. Okay, so in the same way euglena also have chloroplast A and chloroplast B. That is what it means. So example is euglena. And coming to slime molds, don't get confused with bread molds. Bread mold is different and slime mold is different. Slime mold, it comes under Protista, and this bread mold, it comes under Protozoa. Okay, so slime mold, it is saprophytic in nature. Slime molds are saprophytic in nature, and that means they depend on decaying plants and animals. The organisms which depend on decaying plants and animals and absorb the organic soluble organic substances from these decaying plants and animals, these are called as saprophytes, and they form plasmodium under suitable conditions. So what is plasmodium? Is that the slime mold, the gametes of the slime mold, they they together, they together form a structure called plasmodium. This is plasmodium, which is phenocytic in nature. That means it has multiple nuclei, but it has multiple nuclei, and there is no separation between two nuclei, and they have a single boundary. And this plasmodium is formed during favorable conditions, and this plasmodium can spread to like many feet on the trunk of this trees. Okay, under unfavorable conditions, what happens is that this plasmodium, it forms bodies like which has like sporangium, and which produces sporangiophores, etc. So that is this plasmodium. See, this is the slime mold which forms plasmodium under favorable conditions, and I said you, plasmodium forms fruiting bodies which produces the spores. The spores actually have the true cell walls, but this plasmodium doesn't have a true cell wall. The spores have a true cell wall, and that is those spores are resistant to adverse conditions. I have already discussed this in case of bacteria also, it is the same. And coming to protozoans, like primitive animalia, like first animals, these are primitive relatives of animals. They can be either they are heterotrophs only, they cannot be autotrophs, like there are no autotrophs, and this depend on other organisms for their food. And predators, which which use other organisms as their prey, and parasites which depend on other organisms for their food. Okay, these are the primitive relatives of animals, and the four major groups are present in the protozoans. Protozoans are divided into four major groups. They are amoeboid protozoans, flagellated protozoans, ciliated protozoans, and sporozoans. The thing you have to remember is the name of these four major groups, and the other characteristics will be remembered by you easily if you remember one example from each of these groups. When you see amoeboid protozoans, seeing it only you will understand that one example can be amoeba. Fine. So yes, one of the examples of amoeboid protozoans is amoeba, and another example is entamoeba. See, amoeba and entamoeba, these are the examples of amoeboid protozoans, and they live in either fresh water, sea water, or moist soil. And when you imagine amoeba, what can you first think of? The pseudopodia, right? So these amoeboid protozoans, they use pseudopodia to capture food. And the marine forms, the forms which live in the sea water, they have silica shells on their surface. Silica shells, this you have to remember. And some of these amoeboid protozoans are parasites. Example, entamoeba. Example, entamoeba histolytica, which causes amoebic dysentery, amoebiasis. Okay. Coming to flagellated protozoans, the protozoans which have flagella. Example, trypanosoma. This trypanosoma, these flagellated protozoas, they can either be free living or parasitic. If example of one parasitic form is the trypanosoma, which causes the sleeping sickness. Okay, next coming to ciliated protozoans, the protozoans which have cilia. What can you think of? Paramecium. Like paramecium, it has cilia all over its body. So these protozoans, they have thousands of cilia, and the coordinated movement of the cilia, it helps to push the food into the gullet. Gullet is nothing but the mouth of the protozoans. Think of the mouth, okay? And the coordinated movement of the cilia helps in moving the food into the gullet. Example, paramecium. And coming to sporozoans. The sporozoans, they have infectious spore-like stage in their life cycle. If you remember the life cycle of a plasmodium, plasmodium, here I am not referring to the slime mold plasmodium. The plasmodium here I am referring to is malarial parasite. If you know the life cycle of a malarial parasite, see, the Anopheles, female Anopheles mosquito, which transfers the infective stage of plasmodium, the malarial parasite, it injects the sporozoid stage into our bloodstream. The sporozoid stage is the infective stage of malarial parasite. So the sporozoans are those protozoans which have infectious spore-like stage in their life cycle. Example, plasmodium. Okay. So here is a picture of amoeba showing pseudopod and all, and this is the life cycle of entamoeba histolytica. So here you can see there is some pseudopodia, ectoplasm. Okay. This is an picture of trypanosoma. You can see there is a flagella. Fine. Yeah. And this is an example of paramecium. This is an example of ciliated protozoan, paramecium. See, it looks like a slipper, so this is also called a slipper animalcule. And see, cilia all over the body, and the coordinated movement of the cilia helps to push the food into the gullet. And coming to the kingdom fungi, and kingdom fungi have only heterotrophic organisms. Examples are bread molds. See, slime mold is different from bread mold. Okay, examples are bread molds, orange rot. Like oranges, if they are put aside like for many days under in moist conditions, they form some they rot, and you can see some fungi on that. Okay. Mushrooms, toadstools. Okay. Toadstools and mushrooms look alike, but there are some differences. Do not eat toadstools. Okay. White spots on some mustard leaves, it is because of fungi only. And yeast is used in preparation of bread and beer for fermentation. And wheat rust, it is a disease caused by the fungi Puccinia. And penicillium is a fungi which produces the penicillin, which is an antibiotic. Do you remember the discovery of penicillin, like how the penicillin is discovered? Okay, I will say you. A scientist, Alexander Fleming, he was working on some bacterial cultures, Staphylococcus cultures. Okay, so he cultured, people culture bacteria in some plates, culture plates. So he cultured, and he had to leave the culture plates aside for few days. So when he came back, he saw that there is contamination in the cultures. Contamination in the sense, suppose you are growing bacterial cultures, one type of bacterial culture, you should have the same, you should have your desired bacteria. That is what you want. So that is a normal uncontaminated culture plate. Suppose other species, other strains of bacteria or other species come and they contaminate, they grow in your plate, that is called contamination. So what he saw is that there was some contamination by fungi, and what he observed that around that fungi there are no bacterial cultures. There are bacterial cultures in the plate, but around that fungi there were no bacterial cultures. That means his observation was so keen that he understood that the fungi might the contamination, whatever it is present, it might be releasing some substances that is inhibiting the growth of the bacteria, his culture. So later on it was discovered the substance that was inhibiting the growth of bacteria, it was later discovered to be penicillin, the antibiotic penicillin, and the contamination was fungi penicillium. Okay, this fungi grows in warm and humid places, and it is filamentous in nature. If you see the fungus, you can easily make out it is filamentous in nature, and it consists of hyphae. I will show you the hyphae, and this network of hyphae is called as mycelium. Okay, and the hyphae can either be cenocytic or they are septate. Cenocytic in the sense many nuclei in a single cell, that is called cenocytic in nature. Means I'll show you some diagram which makes you clear, which makes this point clear. A cell wall is made of chitin and polysaccharides, but the polysaccharide here is not cellulose. So here you can see the bread mold, and here you can see this is also bread mold. This is the sporangiophore, the sporangium. It releases the spores. Okay, here the sporangiophore, this is the sporangium releasing sporangiospores, and here you can see the hyphae and mycelium. And actually whenever you come across the word rhizode, it means it is referring to roots. Okay, and coming to wheat rust. Wheat rust caused by Puccinia. See, in wheat this disease is caused by the fungi Puccinia, and you can see it looks like rust, right? Rust that is formed on iron surfaces. That is the reason this is called rust. This disease, since because of its appearance, it is called wheat rust. And see, this is the culture plate I was talking to. This is original culture plate, but taken after like many days. It is dried up. See, this is the contamination, and there is no bacterial colony around it, but the bacterial colonies are present a little far. And this is the fungi. This is the hyphae of the fungi. See, if there is a cross wall between two nucleus, then it is not cenocytic, like each nucleus in one box like structure, and this is not multinucleated. And when it comes to this, there is no cross wall or septa, all nuclei in a single box like structure. This is called cenocytic hyphae, and this is called septate hyphae. This is called aseptate hyphae, and this is called septate hyphae, and this is septate hyphae. And coming to saprophytes, like I said you, fungi, they are saprophytes or parasites. Okay, and they can also be symbionts. Saprophytes are those organisms which depend on decaying plant and animals. Okay, they absorb the soluble organic matter from the dead substrates. And parasites are those organisms those depend on living plants and animals. Okay, living plants and animals. Saprophytes are those organisms which depend on dead and decaying plants and animals. Symbionts are those organisms which live with other organisms in association. In the case of symbiosis, both the organisms that are living in that are living in the symbiotic association, both of them get benefit with from each other. Examples are lichens and mycorrhiza. So lichens are the symbiotic association. Lichens is a symbiotic association between fungi and algae. So in case of lichens, the fungi, it provides the shelter for algae. It also absorbs water and minerals from the environment, and provide to the algae, and algae it takes up all and it prepares food by photosynthesis and provides to fungi. And mycorrhiza, myco, study of fungi is called mycology. Okay, whenever you come across the word myco, it means it is referring to fungi. So myco, and rhiza, I have already said you, rhizoid, rhiza means roots. So mycorrhiza, fungi and roots. Fungi that live in association with roots of higher plants is called mycorrhiza. And coming to reproduction in fungi, reproduction in fungi can either be vegetative, asexual or sexual. In case of vegetative means it can be the fragmentation of the hyphae. When the hyphae is fragmented, each fragment forms a complete organism again. It can be the fission, okay, it can be binary fission, multiple fission, whatever it is. It can be budding in case of like example yeast and etc. Asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction can be because of spores, same like bacteria, but here the spores are called conidia, or they can be branchiophores spores, or they can be zoospores. Okay, and like different names of different spores produced by different fungi. Okay, we will see examples. And sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is because of oospores, ascospores, and basidiospores. You will see about this within few minutes from now. And all these spores are produced in the fruiting bodies. Fruiting bodies, you will see everything like within few minutes from now. And the sexual cycle consists of plasmogamy, karyogamy, meiosis to produce haploid spores. See, a plasmogamy, what happens is that in case of fungi, the haploid cells, they come and they fuse. So when they fuse, the protoplasts, they fuse together. That is called plasmogamy. But when the protoplasts, they fuse together, I mean when the cells, they fuse together, the nuclei do not fuse immediately. So the cells stay in this dinucleate condition, which is called dikaryotic condition. After some time, what happens is that the nuclei also fuse. Karyo means nuclei, gamy means fusion. The nuclei also fuse. So when the nuclei also fuse, they form a zygote. When the zygote is formed, the zygote, it undergoes meiosis to produce haploid spores. So that zygote is the only stage in the life cycle of this fungi which is diploid in condition. So when the zygote is formed, it undergoes meiosis to produce spores. Okay, so this is the life cycle of fungi. And here is a picture which is showing the budding in yeast. The scientific name of yeast is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Okay, and here it is showing the fragmentation in fungus. This is fungus. Okay, a fragmentation in fungus. So when the hyphae it gets fragmented, each fragment will have the capability to form the entire organism. And here is an example of, this is toads to ligas. Okay, and here are the types of gametes. So if the gametes that are fusing, if both of the gametes they have similar shape and size, they are called isogamy. Iso means same, gamy means fusion. Fusion of similar looking gametes is called isogamy. Anisogamy is the condition in which one of the gamete is larger in size while one of the gamete is smaller in size. That is aniso. Aniso means dissimilar gametes. Anisogamy, dissimilar gametes are fusing. Gamy means fusion. Oogamy. Oogamy, in the case of oogamy, the female gamete is large, one of the gamete is larger in size, and the male gamete it is smaller in size and it is motile, and the female gamete it is larger in size, it is non-motile, and the fusion between two such gametes is called oogamy. In case of human beings, see, the female gamete is non-motile and it is larger in size, while the male gamete that is sperm, it is smaller in size and it is motile. So that is called as oogamy. Okay, so there are four classes of fungi: Phycomycetes, Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes, and Deuteromycetes. So we will study each of this type of class in detail. Phycomycetes. Phyco, Phyco, whenever you come across this word Phyco, it means algae. Normally it means algae. Okay, Phycomycetes. So why are these called Phycomycetes? Is because in many respects they are similar to algae. That is the reason they are called Phycomycetes. Okay, and these are found in aquatic habitats on decaying wood, moist and damp places, or obligate parasites on plants. Obligate means mandatory, like they can live only as parasites on plants. That is called obligate. And mycelium, the mycelium is the network of hyphae is called mycelium, right? So the mycelium of Phycomycetes can either be aseptate, it is aseptate and sinusoidal. So you will see out of the 4 classes we have, only the mycelium of Phycomycetes is aseptate, it is only sinusoidal, that's it. And the other 3 fungi, right, they have mycelium which is septate in nature, which have septate, which have partition. Okay, it is easy to remember. And the asexual reproduction is because of zoospores, which are motile, or aplanospores, which are non-motile, and these spores are produced in sporangium. I have shown you in case of bread mold, there are like there is a stack like structure which is called sporangiophore, on which you have a ball like structure, sac like structure, which is called sporangium, from which the sporangiospores are produced. And the sexual reproduction is because of zygospore. The sexual reproduction is like zygospore is formed by the fusion of the 2 gametes, like 2 gametes they fuse to form this zygospore. If the gametes are similar, they are called isogamous. If they are dissimilar, they are called anisogamous, or it can be oogamic. Example: mucor, rhizopus, the bread mold is called rhizopus, albugo, the parasitic fungus. And this is one I am showing. The stalk is called sporangiospore, and this is called sporangium, and the sporangiospores are produced from this. And see, if this is the complete fungus, right, this is called mycelium. And here in the picture you can see that there is no septate, and all the nuclei are in the same, they're in the same compartment, the multinucleated condition. Here you can see black dots. So Ascomycetes, ascus means sac. So these fungi are called sac fungi. I'll show you why they are called sac fungi. And mostly unicellular, but mostly multicellular, sorry, but they also have this unicellular fungi. Example: yeast. And they're saprophytic in nature. They're decomposers which help in decomposition of dead plants and animals. And they are parasitic and or coprophilous. Copro means dung, philus means loving, dung loving. Okay, the mycelium is branched and septate, I have already said you. The asexual reproduction is because of asexual spores called conidia, which are produced on conidiophores. I'll show you the diagram. Conidia on germination produce mycelium. Okay, sexual spores are ascospores. Because Ascomycetes, the sexual spores are ascospores. These are produced endogenously in asci, which are arranged in ascocarps. I'll show you the picture. Okay, in the next slide I have pictures. And examples are Aspergillus, Claviceps, Neurospora, Penicillium, which produces antibiotic penicillin, etc. So this Neurospora, it is used extensively in research work. Why? It because the genome sequencing of Neurospora was done, and because of that, many people use Neurospora for their research. And morels and buffels are edible and considered delicacies. See, these morels and buffels are also members of Ascomycetes. These morels, they are difficult to culture. That is the reason they are expensive. And buffels, these buffels usually grow underground, and you cannot see them, like you cannot identify where did they grow. And people use like different dogs to smell where the buffels are present inside the ground. That is the reason they are expensive. And here is a conidiophore on which the conidia are produced. Okay, these are conidia. So this conidia, when they fall on the ground, they form the hyphae, and they form the ascocarp. This is the ascocarp, inside which you have asci. The plural is asci. Inside the asci you have the ascospores. So the ascospores are endogenously produced in asci, which are present inside the ascocarp. And here you can see this is the picture of asci with the ascospores. And next class is Basidiomycetes, and examples are mushrooms, bracket fungi or puffballs. They grow in soil, on logs and tree stems, and they live as parasites on plants. Examples are rust and smuts. These are examples of Basidiomycetes. And the mycelium is branched and septate, and the spores, asexual reproduction is generally absent, but the vegetative reproduction is present, and the vegetative reproduction takes place through fragmentation. Okay, I have said you the fragmentation, the fragments can produce the entire organism. And the sex organs are absent, but the plasmogamy is brought by fusion of two vegetative or somatic cells of different strains or genotypes, which results in the dikaryotic structure that ultimately forms the basidium. Okay, the dikaryotic structure, it forms the basidium. Basidium, see, I'll show you. Okay, basidiospores are produced exogenously on basidium. Basidium, you have seen asci, right, in which the ascospores are produced. In the same way, this Basidiomycetes it has basidium. I'll show you the picture. And this basidium are produced on these basidiocarps. Okay, examples are agaricus, that is mushroom, Ustilago, that is mud. See, this is a fungi. See, the fungi, this is the carp, basidiocarp, and on this basidiocarp, on this gills like structure, you have the basidium. Okay, on this basidium, exogenously the basidiospores are produced. Fine. See, here you can see basidium is produced, on which the basidiospores are produced, and this is called fruiting body. This thing what you eat na, this is called fruiting body. Okay, and what is present inside the fruiting body and inside the ground? Mycelium, which is haploid in nature. So what is present like in the entire thing is the mycelium only. Okay, you have mycelium everywhere. And coming to Deuteromycetes, these are imperfect fungi. Why these are called imperfect fungi? Because there is no sexual stage present in the Deuteromycetes. Like whenever they found sexual stage of any fungi that is already present in the Deuteromycetes, the later, because of the the type of reproduction and all, it has happened that they need to put them in other classes of the fungi, either Ascomycetes or Basidiomycetes, like that. So that is the reason these are called imperfect fungi. No, because no sexual phase is known, and the asexual spores is because of conidia, which are produced on coniodophores, and the mycelium is septate and branched. These are the saprophytes, parasites, decomposers, and these also help in mineral recycling. Example: Alternaria, Coletotrichum, Trichoderma, etc. And coming to Kingdom Plantae, the Kingdom Plantae is not discussed briefly in this chapter. There is a separate chapter on this Kingdom Plantae, and the things you have to remember are, these are eukaryotic, of course, and they have chlorophyll, of course, and they are autotrophic in nature. Because they have chlorophyll, they will synthesize its own food, so they are autotrophic, but partially heterotrophic also, because there are plants which are insectivorous and which are parasites. And examples of insectivorous plants are Venus flytrap, bladderwort. These are examples. And examples of parasitic plants are Cuscuta. Cuscuta is a complete stem parasite. That means it it depends on stem of its host for minerals and water. Okay, salts, minerals, waters, everything for its food, everything, sugars and sugar, mineral, nutrients, water, everything. And cell wall is made up of cellulose. This is very important. And the plantae, it has different groups like algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms and angiosperms. The life cycle, it consists of two stages: haploid gametophytic and diploid sporophytic. You will learn this in your later chapters. So what you have to remember is the gametophyte, the gamete which has the gametes in it. Okay, it is haploid in nature. The rest everything is diploid in nature. The diploid one is called the sporophyte. The diploid phase is called the sporophytic phase. And because there is you can see this alternation. This is called as alternation of generations. Here you can see the picture of a Venus flytrap which trapped the insect, and here this is a picture which shows the alternation of generations, where the gametes are haploid in nature, and the fusion of the gametes produces the zygote, and everything is diploid in nature, and this is called as alternation of generations. Coming to kingdom Animalia, we example, just remember we are heterotrophic, right, and we are eukaryotes, and we are multicellular, and our cells lack cell wall, and we digest food in an internal cavity called gut, and we store the food reserves as glycogen or fat, extra food reserves as glycogen and fat, and we have this holozoic mode of nutrition where we engulf everything, and we have a definite growth pattern. Like our zygote, it undergoes a specific pattern during the growth. It is not like once it is 4 cells, next it is 5 cells, next it is 10 cells, nothing like that. There is a definite growth pattern of our embryo and everything, and we have a definite shape and size. And the higher forms, like we human beings, we have elaborate sensory and neuromotor mechanisms, and we have the ability of locomotion. Of course, many protozoans, even they can move and all, but we have this ability to move, locomotion. And the sexual reproduction is by copulation followed by embryological development. Okay, and coming to viruses, viroids and lichens. So let us study about viruses. These viruses, they are not classified in any of the 5 kingdoms. These are acellular in nature. That means there is no cell. Like these viruses are inert crystalline particles outside a cell, but when they get access to any living cell, they infect the cells, and they take over the machinery of the host cell, and replicates its progeny. And examples like common flu, a common cold or flu causing what are those organisms which are causing this common cold, flu, etc.? Those are viruses. And the COVID-19 is caused by this coronavirus, right? And once infected, so once the virus is outside, it is just like an inert crystalline structure, but once when it gets access to any living cells, it takes over the machinery of the host cells and it replicates. And the virus is described as a poisonous fluid or a venom by Louis Pasteur. Ivanovsky called it to be Ivanovsky, he said that no, it is not only fluid, but there are some microbes in it which are the causative organisms of this tobacco mosaic disease in tobacco. Although the tobacco mosaic disease is caused by a virus. Okay, and this Ivanovsky was saying that no, it is not simply a fluid, but they have this fluid, it has some microbes which are responsible for generating of this disease. And Bejering, what he did is that he took this fluid from this tobacco from the plant which is suffering from this tobacco mosaic disease, and he filtered it through the bacterial filter, and he re-injected it into a healthy tobacco plant. But what he found that the healthy tobacco plant, after being injected by the filtered fluid, even after that, it showed this mosaic disease of tobacco. So they were saying that what Bejering said that these particles are, the microbes which are responsible for causing this mosaic disease of tobacco, they are smaller than the bacteria, and he called them contagium vivum fluidum because it is contagious in nature. It can spread from one plant to another plant. And Stanley, what he did was he crystallized these viruses, and he showed that as a viruses, in its structure, mostly it has protein in its structure. This is what Stanley said. Today we know that viruses are nothing but a protein box inside which you have the genome. Not box, it's like a genome which is covered by a protein shell. That is a virus. Okay, today we know it, but previously, for the first time, Stanley, he crystallized the viruses, and he said that viruses mostly have protein in their structure, and viruses are obligate parasites. They cannot live outside as viruses. I mean, they live as inert crystalline structures outside a living cell. Okay, so they have to be compulsorily, live as a parasite only. That is called obligate parasite. And the genetic material can be either DNA or RNA, like it can be double stranded DNA or single stranded DNA, it can be single stranded RNA, etc. And our protein coat and the outer protein coat, sorry, so and it also has an outer protein coat, genetic material plus outer protein coat. These together make up the virus. So this is called as nucleoprotein. Viruses are often referred to as nucleoproteins. And bacteriophages are those viruses which infect bacteria. Okay, the viruses which infect bacteria are called as bacteriophages, and usually these bacteriophages have their genome is double stranded DNA. Okay, and the protein coat is made up of, the protein coat is called capsid, and this capsid is made up of smaller subunits called as capsomeres. Okay, meres means subunits, units. And this capsid, this protein coat, it protects the nucleic acid. This protein coat, it protects the nucleic acid present inside. And the capsomeres can be, they can be arranged either in helical manner, or they can be arranged in some polyhedral geometric form. Okay, here is a picture. You can see the capsomeres are arranged helically. Okay, and here you can see the capsomeres are arranged in some geometrical form. And some examples of some viral diseases are like mumps, influenza, smallpox, herpes, AIDS, COVID-19, etc. And in plants, you can see sometimes there is like mosaic formation on leaf. Okay, that one, and leaf rolling, curling, yellowing of leaf, vein clearing, dwarfing, stunted growth. Like there are many viruses which are responsible for generating these diseases in these plants. And what are viroids? Viroids are viroids only have this genetic material. They don't have any protein coat. So viruses minus protein coat is called viroids. And just to make it simple, I'm saying this: viruses without a protein coat, the single DNA, if it is present, that is called viroids. Don't say anyone that if you remove the protein coat of a virus, it becomes viroid. No, I'm just trying to make you understand. That's it. So viroids are described by Theo Diener, and these are smaller than viruses, of course, because they don't have any protein coat. They simply have this genetic material. An example of one disease caused by viroids is potato spindle tuber disease, and it is caused by free RNA. Okay, they have this RNA as the genetic material, and they lack this protein coat. And lichens, what are lichens? I have already said you, the symbiotic association between algae and fungi. Okay, the algal component is called phycobiont. I have already said in case of phycomycetes also that phyco means algae. Okay, phyco means algae, biont means life. Okay, so the algal component is called phycobiont, and it is autotrophic in nature, while the fungal component is called mycobiont, and it is heterotrophic in nature. And the fungi it provides the shelter and it absorbs mineral nutrients and water from for its partner, while the algae it prepares food. And lichens can be observed in those places where the pollution is very less. So they are very good pollution indicators. And here is a diagram of the lichens. See lichens. Thank you for watching my video. Please like, share and subscribe if you liked my lecture. Thank you.